start shortly.
Thank you, Ms Weatherall. Item 1, meeting opening, 1.1. Welcome to the Ordinary Council meeting of 28th of January 2025. Item 1.2, attendance. Are there any apologies, Ms Weatherall?
Yes, Mayor. We have a few apologies this evening. We have Councillor Sophie Tan, Councillor Sean O'Reilly, Councillor Bob Milkovich, Councillor Loy Trong and Councillor Alice Fong Le.
Thank you, Ms Weatherall. Item 1.3, acknowledgement of traditional custodians of the land. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Bunurong people, and pay respect to their elders past and present. We recognise and respect their continuing connections to climate, culture, country and waters, and we also pay our respect and acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and their elders present here today in acknowledging their journey. Item 1.4, offering of prayer, reflection or affirmation. As part of Council's commitment to recognising the cultural and spiritual diversity of our community, the prayer, reflection or affirmation this evening will be offered by Metap Williams, President of the Greater Dandenong Interfaith Network. Welcome.
Good evening and Assalamu alaikum. In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. O Allah, Lord of all creation, we gather here today in service to our community, seeking your guidance, wisdom and blessings. Grant us clarity in our decisions, humility in our actions, and sincerity in our intentions. Help us to serve with justice, compassion, and integrity, ensuring the welfare of all people, regardless of their backgrounds or beliefs. Unite our hearts in understanding and cooperation, and allow us to be a source of peace and progress for our community. Let us remember the importance of justice, compassion, and unity as emphasized in the teachings of many faiths. The principle of standing firm for what is right and ensuring fairness resonate deeply with the values we uphold in our service to the community. We ask you to bless this council, its members, and the people we serve. Guide us to uphold the principle of fairness and respect, and to act in ways that reflect your mercy and kindness. O Allah, protect us from division and grant us the strength to face challenges with patience and perseverance. Let our work today and every day be a means of fostering harmony, equity, and the betterment of society. Amen.
Thank you, Ms Williams. Item 1.5, confirmation of minutes of previous meeting. Meeting of Council held on the 9th of December 2024. Moved by Councillor Garrard.
Seconded.
Second by Councillor Dan. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. Item 1.6, disclosures of interest. Ms Weatherall.
Mr Mayor, I don't have any disclosures of interest that have been provided to me this evening.
Thank you, Ms Weatherall. Item 1.7, adoption of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting minutes. Moved by Councillor Garrard, second by Councillor Yim. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the item carried. Item 2, Officers' Reports, Part 1. 2.1, Petitions and Joint Letters. 2.1.1, Petitions and Joint Letters.
Happy to move that, Mayor.
Moved by Councillor Formosa.
Seconded.
Second by Councillor Dan. Are there any questions? Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Mayor. The 3 current petitions, I understand, have been on this item since October and November last year. Are they going to stay in perpetuity, or are we going to resolve these issues and move these on? I think this is the 4th or 5th meeting where we've had the same petitions, and I'm just wondering what is the process for resolution?
Mr Foley.
I'll have to take that on notice because we've got to go through the... Sorry, through you, Mayor, we have to take that on notice. I'm sorry, Council, we need to go through and just clarify with the various owners of the petitions where they're at.
Thank you, Mr. Foley. Is there any further questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the item carried. Item 2.2, statutory planning applications. 2.2.1, town planning application number 11 to 55, Waterview Close, Dandenong South, planning application number PLA 24/0097.
Happy to move that.
Moved by Councillor Formoso, second by Councillor Garrard. Are there any questions? Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Mayor. My question relates to, just to clarify, we're actually not being asked for an approval in this context. Just to clarify, we're actually just noting the extension of the liquor licence, and that come July 1st, these issues or these applications will no longer come to us at all and will automatically be approved. Can I just confirm that?
Mr. Jackson.
Through you, Mayor, just to confirm, we are actually seeking a decision from Council tonight with regards to this planning application. It's come to Council because it proposes to extend the area for the liquor licence, and therefore Council needs to make a decision on whether to approve or to refuse this planning application, so a decision is needed tonight. And in terms of the second part of your question with regards to liquor licence planning permits for liquor licences come the 1st of July, yes, there'll be no, as of the 1st of July, there'll be no requirement for a planning permit for a liquor licence, and rather applicants will just need to go through the VCGLR for a permit, so they don't have to go through both processes.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Is there any further questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. Item 2.2.2, planning delegated decisions issued November and December 2024. Moved by Councillor Garrard, second by Councillor Dan. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. Item 3, public question time. Ms. Weatherall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And our first question, or first questions this evening, are from Charles Torcasio of Dandenong, who has a series of questions concerning Bassett Street, Dandenong, and parking permits. If Charles would like to come up to the microphone, please. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Torcasio. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Mayor Jim, and all council members. Thanks very much for the opportunity. As you know, we put in a request for a parking permit. The reasons being, that the first question is, why hasn't a residential permit parking system been implemented on Bassett Street, given the significant parking challenges caused by the nearby apartment blocks and non-residential vehicles that park there every day? For example, on Cheltenham Road heading towards Dandenong, it's a 2-hour parking on one side of the street. On the opposite side, it's 13 hours. It's a 2-hour parking, but for 13 hours. So they use basically Bassett Street as their car park and all-day parking. So they either go to the industrial estates or just go to the railway station and off to head to work. And because our street's got no restrictions in Bassett Street.
Mr. Jackson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the question. And thank you for the petition. We have received that, and I did speak to our transport team today, and as they are currently investigating the matter and looking at what options could be put in place in the Bassett Street area. Once they've completed that initial investigation, the proposal would be then to go and do a consultation with the surrounding residents and people in that surrounding area to seek some feedback on whatever proposal or options they deem might be most appropriate. And then following that consultation, a decision will be made on what restrictions or process would be put in place from that point onwards.
Well, I have asked a few questions. I've actually put a petition together, which I had about 40 signatures. No worries. Question 2, what steps can the council take to address the illegal activities within Bassett Street, such as people are selling cars there? At the moment, there's 5 cars there with no number plates. I did see one person with a new Land Cruiser, but I didn't take any details. and they use unauthorised addresses, which is our addresses, knocking on their door asking us if we're selling cars. So, you know, it's impacting the safety and the security of the residents.
Through you, Mr Mayor, and again, thank you for the question. As part of the investigation, we'll make sure that our planning compliance team and our local laws team and parking team also investigate any illegal activities or parking that may be occurring in the street and the surrounding area, and then, depending on the outcome of that, certain actions can be taken by council to rectify that situation.
Thank you. My last question is, why does the council provide residential permit parking in nearby areas such as like Keysborough, just 10 minutes down the road, on the corner of Cheltenham Road and Springvale Road? There's the estate there full of townhouses, just opposite Bunnings, and we're under the same jurisdiction, but not for Bassett Street. Can we expect similar measures to be decided, extending into our area? If not, why and when can this matter be solved?
Mr Jackson.
Again, through you, Mr Mayor. In terms of the site that you refer to that's got the current residential parking permits, that's actually a privately owned site, so it's private roads, and that parking system is enacted by the body corporate within that site. So it's a slightly different setup to where you're referring to in terms of that being a council road. But again, we have to look at all options, and then depending on what the outcome of that investigation that I referred to before will depend on what recommendations that our transport officers put back. And as I say, that will be part of a consultation with yourselves and the wider residents in that area before a final decision's made.
Is there a time frame, or when can this be? Any feedback from the council?
Yeah, the team are currently have started the investigation, so they're hoping to sort of within the next 2 to 3 weeks have completed the initial part of the process and then look to go to consultation following that. So I can't give you a definitive date, but that's some approximate guidelines.
And just quickly, this is another resident from Bassett Street, and it's just very frustrating for us. I mean, I can guarantee I get home now, I won't get a car parked 15 metres down the road. Because all other especially the apartment blocks, they've only allowed one car park per apartment, and they all park in our street. And same with Cheltenham Road, which has got the 2-hour limit. They all park there in the morning. Anyway, look, thank you, Mayor Jim and members of council. Look forward to your response. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much for your questions, Mr Takasia. Have a good evening. Ms Weatherall.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And our next question is from Philip Lamaro of Dandenong and concerns plastic use policy. Is Philip here? No. I'll read out Philip's question. Plastic use policy. Dandenong Council in 2019 adopted a single-use plastic policy for the purpose of reducing and eliminating the use and consumption of single-use and soft plastics. In this policy, the council named the Dandenong Market exempt of the policy. Dandenong Market is the largest producer of single-use plastic of any council facility, but it was singled out as being the only facility exempt from this policy. Can the council please explain why this council-owned facility was singled out as not having to abide by the same regulations as other council-owned facilities? And can Mr Jackson answer that, please?
Mr Jackson.
Through you, Mayor, and thank you for the question, Philip. The Dandenong Market was exempt from the single-use plastics policy in 2019 for several reasons. The first of those was the state government introduced their plastic bans around the same time, which were later expanded in 2023. And those state government bans effectively replicated the relevant content of the policy to the market. So effectively it was a replication. In addition, there are complications applying this policy requirements to lease agreements for private traders such as those operating in the market. However, in terms of reducing plastic at the market, both the DMPL and Council have worked with stallholders over several years, which has seen a considerable reduction in single-use plastic at the market. As part of the upcoming update of the single-use plastics policy, Council, along with the support of DMPL, will continue to work towards the minimisation of single-use plastics at the market.
Thank you, Mr Jackson. Councillor Garrow, would you like to add to that?
Mayor, thank you. If I could just provide some further information regarding the market and the use of single-use plastic bags. It's my understanding there has been no reduction in the use of single-use plastic bags. And in fact, not only is this plastic pollution, but it's also causing multiple problems with stormwater and a whole lot of other issues. And in fact, there's no exemption, I understand, for the market to be using the current single-use plastic bags, and that it is actually not compliant with state government information. And so there is far more urgency to a resolution of this issue than I think that has been conveyed.
Thank you, Ms Garrard. Ms Weatherall.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Our next question concerns acknowledgement of country from Philip Lamaro of Dandenong, and the question is, in September 2023, the Dandenong Council and the former Mayor and now Labor Minister Eden Foster advised in their own words the Council was showing disrespect to First Nations people by asking attendees at Council meetings to stand for the prayer but not for acknowledgement to country. Council and Mayor advised this would change in 2023, but recently Dandenong Council has reversed their decision to knowingly return to show disrespect to First Nations people by removing the change. Can Council please explain why they've changed their meeting procedures to admittedly knowingly continuing to show disrespect to First Nations people? Thank you for your question, Philip. Attendees at council meetings continue to have the option to stand for both the prayer and the acknowledgement of country. The choice to stand is a personal decision for attendees.
Thank you, Ms Weatherall.
And the last question from Philip Lamaro concerns plastic bag ban. When does Dandenong Council plan to introduce a plastic bag ban at the Dandenong market to match both the Queen Victoria and South Melbourne markets? Can Mr Foley answer this, please?
Mr Foley.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your question, Philip, and your continued advocacy on single-use plastics. The DMPL board is currently exploring a number of sustainability initiatives, of which the future use of single-use plastics will be considered. Timing for this is yet to be finalised.
Thank you, Mr Foley. Ms Weatherall.
Thank you. Our next question is from Namatula Kadri of Narre Warren South and concerns Thomas Street renaming. Is Namatula here? Namatula, would you like to come up to the microphone, please, to ask your question?
Welcome, Namatula.
Hello, Jim, and thanks for allowing me to answer this question. Will the Dandenong Council kindly consider renaming the problematic nickname of Thomas Street, which is known as Afghan Bazaar, and is an exclusionary and race-specific term, to a more neutral term like Little Bamiyan? Thank you.
Mr Jackson.
Through you, Mayor, and thank you for the question. The cultural precinct named Afghan Bazaar for the area covering Thomas Street in central Dandenong has been in wide use for the community for nearly over 20 years now. The term has been considered to be representative of the diverse and historic cultural perspectives of all Afghanis, and it's very similar to the cultural precinct known as Little India, which covers the business district area or the business area of Foster Street in central Dandenong. As such, at this time, Council does not have any plans to rename the precinct. However, Council will continue to welcome all communities to Greater Dandenong and support all different communities where it can.
Thank you, Mr Jackson.
Can I just remark that Little India is quite different to Little Afghan? India is a place, it's if you named it, say, Afghanistan, it would be a completely different take. But here, Afghan is a race, so they're not the same thing, if I may add.
Okay. Mr Jackson, I think you've answered the question, but if you want to re-answer it again, it's up to you. Do you have any further thing to say to that?
I appreciate your comments, but I don't have any sort of further comment to make on that.
Thank you very much.
Our next question is from Barrett Batua of Pakenham and concerns Thomas Street renaming as well.
Welcome, Barrett.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask a question. So my question is similar to question that Namath asked, so it will give a bit of more of a context. So given that many of you represent a large number of Hazara residents in your wards, would the councillors of the city Greater Dandenong support renaming Afghan Bazaar to Little Bamian? This change would better reflect the cultural heritage of the Hazara community, promote economic growth by attracting tourists and support local businesses, and celebrate the rich history of Bamian. It would also give the city of Greater Dandenong a unique point of difference on the world stage by acknowledging the true contribution of the Hazara community and celebrating their rich culture and historical heritage while fostering greater community cohesion and cultural understanding.
Mr. Jackson.
Through you, Mayor, and thank you again for the question. As mentioned in the previous answer, at this current time, Council doesn't have any plans to rename the area. However, if the Council as a whole at a future date decided to make that change, then obviously that's something that could be considered. But as it stands at the moment, there are no plans to make a change to the name of that area.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you, Bharat. Ms. Weatherall.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Our next question is from Dean Hurlston, who isn't in attendance today, and it concerns council meeting costs. His question: what is the approximate cost per public council meeting for councillor and staff meals, refreshments and beverages? Can I ask Mr Foley to respond, please?
Mr Foley.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Dean, for your question. Council meetings are held in the evening with councillors and council officers often in attendance until 9:30 p.m. or later. Accordingly, attendees are provided a modest meal prior to the commencement of the council meeting. The average cost per meeting is usually around $35 per person. Instant coffee, tea and water is provided for attendees and the general public during the meetings.
Thank you, Mr Foley. Ms Weatherall.
And our last question this evening is from Silvia Mastro Giovanni of Dandenong, and it concerns co-design workshops for Dandenong Community Hub. At the council meeting on Monday, the 26th of August, council voted to recommence co-design workshops with the community for the Dandenong Community Hub project in February 2025 in order to finalise the concept design. What are the actual dates of those co-design workshops in February going to be? There's no information on the council website at the moment. Can Ms Gillies respond,
Ms
please?
Gillies.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you very much, Sylvia, for your question. Certainly we are recommencing those co-design workshops in February, actually in this month's edition of Council News, which should have already or will soon hit mailboxes, is our first advertisement of those dates. So to confirm, we're running 2 workshops to enable people that can only attend during business hours versus those that can attend after hours. Tuesday the 18th of February, 11 a.m. till 1 p.m, and Thursday the 20th of February, 5 p.m. till 7 p.m. We'll be sending out an email to all previous participants as part of that process in the next 24 hours. We just wanted the Council News to hit letterboxes first, and we'll be directly contacting those that have participated in the process so far, just to ensure that they haven't missed that update in Council News. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Gillies. And Ms Weatherall, you'd like to table the questions that are taken on notice at the last council meeting? Thank you very much.
Yes, there they are, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next item. Item 4, Officers' Reports, Part 2, 4.1, Procurement, 4.1.1, 2021/06, Litter Collection, Hand Weeding, Park and Street Furniture Cleaning, Contract Extension. Moved by Councillor Garrard.
Councillor Dan.
Second by Councillor Dan. Are there any questions? Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Mayor. To the CEO, who intends to provide a tender recommendation, my question is, given that this is a social enterprise and benefits a unique group of individuals and provides them with the dignity of work and income, will the recommendation be heavily weighted in terms of social benefit to the unique group that are currently benefiting from this contract?
Ms Weatherall.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In fact, I didn't sit on the evaluation panel, and the Executive Director, City Futures, was responsible for the selection. So, Mr Jackson, are you aware in regards to the weightings for social enterprises.
Mr Jackson.
Through you, Mayor. I believe sorry, Councillor Garrett, are you referring to recommendation 4 on
Yes.
the...
Yes, this is disability inclusive social enterprise.
Yes. So what we're seeking tonight is purely an extension of the existing contract for 12 months, and then recommendation 4 relates to after 12 months, in 12 months' time. So we're just noting that in 12 months' time, a new tender will be undertaken because this contract will have expired at that point in time. And as part of our procurement process, social enterprise is part of that consideration, so it will form part of the consideration at that time.
Thank you, Mr Jackson. Is there any further questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the item carried. Item 4.2, Finance and Budget. 4.2.1, Mid-Year Budget Review 2024 to 2025. Moved by Councillor Dan, second by Councillor Garrard. Are there any questions? Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 3 questions. My first question is regarding the unexpected losses, equaling approximately $850,000, and largely covering insurances and pound expenses and so on. My question is, given that many of these items have blown out by a considerable amount of money, what controls will be put in place going forward to ensure that we have greater financial controls on these items?
Mr Foley.
Through you, Mayor, and thank you for your question, Councillor. We undertake a pretty extensive review of costs. On a monthly basis, we're reviewing all costs in the organisation. In terms of these particular items, some of them are actually driven purely by unexpected volumes or contracts that have rolled over since the budget was approved by Council. And in terms of going forward, we do have some challenges going forward, but as mentioned in the paper, we're still presenting a balanced mid-year budget to Council, and where we have had some over-expenditure, due to a number of reasons, we've actually identified that by offset savings elsewhere in the organisation to make sure that we can continue to deliver a balanced outcome.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Can I just add to that as well? I had a recent meeting with 10 chief executives from major local governments across Victoria, and all local governments are grappling with cost escalations. From last time we ran our contract processes for some of these contracts, like tree pruning, the costs have gone up considerably across the sector for a variety of reasons. So it is a statewide problem.
Thank you, Mr Etheridge. Councillor Garrard.
Thank you. With all due respect, my question was around controls. I don't think my question was answered, but I will take that on notice. My second question is around, I understand $4.65 million was transferred from the major project fund from savings, unexpected savings in other areas. Given this unexpected windfall and the transfer to the major projects, why then was it necessary to move $2.5 million from operational budget to cover the expense of the demolition of the PEP building? And given that you have taken $2.5 million from the operational budget, what services or operations are impacted by the removal of that money?
Mr Foley.
The $2.5 million for the PEP is actually funded through a drawdown on the major projects reserve, and the resolution provided to Council is to essentially recommend that once we know the actual costs and we look at what the financial position is for Council at the end of the year, if we are in a cash surplus, that the priority be given to then putting that cash back into the major projects reserve if there's surpluses available at the end of the year.
Thank you, Mr Foley. Councillor Garrard.
Yeah, so it seems it was an unnecessary transfer is what I really understand from that, because you did have the 4.5, but again, I'll take that on notice. The last question is regarding why did the Springvale Reserve blow out by $300,000?
Mr Foley.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just, when you say Springvale Reserve, Councillor, can I just get, are you referring to the main paper or the specific items to is the attachment?
So against the Springvale Reserve...
what page is that on, Councillor Garrard? What page?
Sorry, I don't have the document in front of me.
Attachment A, page 2 at the top, number 5.
Okay, just to help Mr Foley.
Sorry, through you, Mayor. My understanding is that there was some changes in scope and design, but I could hand that back to the Chief Engineer and ask some more questions in terms of specifics around that, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Foley. Councillor Garrard? Any further questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. Item 4.3, Other, 4.3.1, Federal Election Advocacy Priorities for the City of Greater Dandenong. Moved by Councillor Garrard.
Happy to second that.
Second by Councillor Dan. Are there any questions? Councillor Dan.
Thank you very much, Mayor. To the relevant officer, of course, I welcome the inclusion of housing as part of long-term housing as part of Council's commitment to alleviate housing and rental stress here in Greater Dandenong. I'm happy for this question to be taken on notice, but I'd also like to understand as well what Council's goals are in relation to short-term emergency housing as well, and what sort of federal programs or funding streams are currently available for immediate action going forward as well, to also complement the longer-term goals. I'd just be curious to find out any information on that if possible. Thank you.
Ms Hajari.
Through you, Mayor, and thank you for your question. That is a very good question. This advocacy pack for the federal election was targeted to the specific project that we could ask, but as you mentioned, the housing is important and the stream of the advocacy that we are tackling in the different ways, and very happy to provide you more details on that. But we are working with the agencies like Ways, with Launch Housing, to see how we can really, on their behalf, we can advocate to state and local and federal government, and the housing in different stages. Like, as I said, this is the federal ones, but also we are working with our MPs and the state government to make sure through different streams of the work we can really have more opportunity for the city of Greater Dandenong for the housing one. But happy to have a further conversation on that.
Thank you, Ms Hajari. Is there any further questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. 4.3.2, List of registered correspondence to the Mayor and councillors. Moved by Councillor Garrard, second by Councillor Formosa. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. Item 4.3.3, Draft Minutes of Advisory Committee Meetings. Moved by Councillor Garrard, second by Councillor Yim. Are there any questions? Councillor Doe.
Apologies. Thank you. Sorry. I just have a question regarding the Springvale Community Hub meeting, where on item 6, the update on proposed Hub's advisory committee review of Hub frameworks on page 150. It notes that council officers have presented to council on the Keysborough South Community Hub strategic plan with one recommendation to have a combined hub advisory committee, and that the terms of reference have been drafted and will be out for a community consultation early in 2025. As I understand, this was presented to council prior to the election. With the Keysborough South Community Hub being slated to open mid this year, it's imperative that we just get a copy of that strategic draft plan, because from my understanding, and I might be incorrect, we do not have an operational plan, and with operators needing a long lead time to plan appropriately, do we have an expression of interest for who the childcare providers will be, especially with the alternative models of childcare that there's a lot of interest in? In my personal view, by not having this out right now, it really disadvantages the community considering the timelines. I'm also personally interested to learn about the community feedback consultation and its impact on that draft strategic plan. Thank you.
Ms Gillies.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Thanks so much, Councillor Doe, for your question. I believe you've actually got a meeting scheduled in with the relevant team on Friday next week, where they'll be stepping through what was presented to councillors before the election last year. So certainly that's a priority for the team to be able to share with you. In terms of so we already have on our website and have done for about 8 months now, where families can make expressions of interest in relation to the early childhood services. In terms of operationally providers, we actually can't do an expression of interest until we have, for lack of more technical terms, we need to actually have approval from the Department of Education that stipulates how many places are approved. Until we've actually got that, and there's dependencies in terms of completion of the build. So as soon as built into our project plan, we're very aware of what needs to be in place before we can get that approval from the department, at which point we then have a process we go through from a procurement perspective that calls for expressions of interest from providers. So it's very tightly timed in terms of when we can actually do that process. It is a process that we've got very clear steps around. So we will certainly be doing that. In terms of the strategic plan, we were the team were keen to run through that with you next Friday, and then we'll actually be bringing a report back to council. The specific mention in there from the Springvale Community Hub is in relation to consolidating or perhaps joining the Springvale Community Hub Advisory Committee and the Keysborough South Community Hub potential into one committee, but we would need, because Springvale is a council endorsed committee, we need to bring that back to council for endorsement, which will be happening shortly. So we'll bring that as well as the final recommendation around the strategic plan to council.
Thank you, Ms Gillies. Councillor Doe.
Thank you for that response. Just in the timelines for the childcare or the early childcare, does that mean that that won't be open or accessible when the hub opens?
Ms Gillies.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Once the facility is commissioned, certainly it will become available, but the reality is we wouldn't commence early childhood services until the new calendar year, because that's when intakes and the like will happen. So by the time we're handed over from the building, the facilities, we've then got to do the full fit out as part of the commissioning. That's the similar time that the process for approval of licensed places and the EOI in terms of the actual manager of the early childhood services would be occurring, and early childhood service would commence from the new year. All of that information, as I mentioned, is shared in terms of through our website. People can register and express their interest in accessing those services from the timing of the 20th January 2026.
Thank you, Ms Gillies. Councillor Doe.
Thank you for answering that. So is just because I know that I've had some expressions of interest from community members, I don't think that they're quite aware that they're not going to get that access until early 2026. So is it possible just to make that a little bit clearer in the expression of interest? Thank you.
Yeah, certainly we can have another look at that. In a project working group meeting that we had just last week, actually, we also discussed speaking to the builder because they're responsible for the fencing that's currently up. We were going to speak to the builder about potentially allowing us to put some signage up that speaks specifically to the timeframes and pointing people to the website for more information. So we'll continue to look at those options as well.
Thank you, Ms Gillies. Thank you, Councillor Doe. Are there any further questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. Item 4.3.4, draft minutes of the Multicultural and People Seeking Asylum Advisory Committee on the 12th of November 2024.
Happy to move that.
Councillor Formoso, second by Councillor Garrard. Are there any questions? Is there any opposition? If there is no opposition, I declare the motion carried. Item 5, notices of motion. There are none. Item 6, reports from councillors, delegated members and councillor questions. Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Mayor. It has been my great pleasure today and in recent times to spend time with the traders in Thomas Street, many of whom are here in the gallery tonight, who, as we know, over the last 2 decades, have transformed what was a very desolate part of the Dandenong city centre into the thriving business hub that it is today, contributing millions to our local economy over that time. Through their entrepreneurship, Thomas Street has become one of the most visited areas in our city. Good luck finding a car park after 5 o'clock in that part of Thomas Street, given the tremendous success that it is. The traders are very passionate about sharing their unique history and culture, rooted in their origins, geographically placed, as we heard before, in Buninyong. They believe that the renaming of the Thomas Street, or what is known as the Afghan Bazaar, would enrich our cultural exchange and offer, as we heard before, a distinctive identity to our city, fostering vibrant street festivals and community celebrations, food and culture. It's been a great pleasure to hear about your unique culture, and I strongly support your initiative to rename that area for the benefits to Dandenong in terms of our trade and unique point of difference, but also because of the historical and the conflict-based reasons why you are seeking that change. So I wish all power to your initiative, and I will, going forward, be a strong supporter of that change of name. My first question relates to a very sad issue that I became aware of over the weekend. I was deeply saddened to learn of the tragic fate of a young man, Sam Kest, who was an employee at a company called Playground Centre Limited, of which we are customers and have been ongoing customers for some time. Sam, who was only 27 years of age, died by suicide November 2023. Before his death, Sam had expressed significant concerns and stress due to poor and unsafe working conditions, including long hours, underpayment, lack of training and inadequate support. The company, Playground Centre Limited, is run by members of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, who in New Zealand are provided with exemptions from workplace practices such as not having to allow external agencies in, such as unions. Sam, however, worked for them in Australia where there are no exceptions or exemptions, and that this organisation is subject to the same workplace regulations that all companies are. Despite that, it appears, according to his sister, Sam's sister Serena, that the company has greatly failed Sam and her family. Serena, who is a remarkable person, had to fight to ensure a work-safe investigation and coroner's examination into the matters contributing to her brother's death, and to raise awareness of the alleged, at this stage, practices that appear to pose significant risk to employees of that company. My questions are, in light of the ongoing WorkSafe investigation into this company and their practices, and that we have a policy of not engaging with companies that are not compliant with our workplace regulations, will the Council suspend all contracts with this organisation until the outcomes of the WorkSafe investigation are concluded? And if that investigation confirms the findings that there are violations, including failure to ensure employee safety and compliance with workplace laws, will the Council cease all procurement from this company?
Mr. Foley.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your question, Councillor Garrard. At the moment, I've just asked the team if we can assess if we're even using this contractor. And once we know if we are using the contractor, we can take a look at the workplace investigation and see if that has any impact on ongoing service delivery and what our relationship might be. But until I need to first establish whether or not we're actually using the contractor in-house.
Thank you, Mr Foley.
Through you, Mayor, perhaps
Ms.
I can
Redall?
just add, Councillor Garrard, they're very serious allegations. I certainly will ensure that I investigate whether we're using that company or whether whether it's a historic use of that company or whether we are currently using that company, and look at it in line with our policy as well.
Thank you, Ms Weatherall. Councillor Garrard.
Can I thank the CEO for agreeing to do that? And can I thank Serena, whose loss is profound. And thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Councillor Yu.
Last Sunday, I was able to attend my first Greater Dandenong Australia Day Awards held just before the citizenship ceremony with Councillors Isabella Doe, Lana Formoso, Deputy Mayor Sophie Tan and Mayor Jim Mehmeti. It was an amazing day to celebrate the amazing individuals and organisations in our community who work to make our city a great place to live. Congratulations again to the Greater Dandenong Australia Day Award winners. Earlier this year, I also attended a Lunar New Year and Thanksgiving lunch on the 12th, hosted by the Guild Chinese Association of Victoria, with Deputy Mayor Sophie Tan and Mayor Jim Mehmeti. They have a beautiful temple showcasing pieces of their culture. I went there for the first time and I highly recommend everyone visit if they have a chance. It's a little bit hidden away, but they're at 9 Newcomen Road, Springvale. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Yu. Councillor Formosa.
Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, a Happy New Year to all of our residents, to the councillors and obviously all the council staff. I'm very excited about 2025 and the year ahead and all the fantastic work we're going to do for the community. Also, Happy Chinese New Year to everyone that will be celebrating from tomorrow. These festivities go on for weeks, so a lot of us will be attending a lot of those. We've already attended some of them over the weekend, and I'm sure we'll continue to do so over the coming weeks. And as mentioned, we did have the Australia Day Awards over the weekend, and that was absolutely fantastic once again to see our community being highlighted, and particular people and community groups that do such an incredible job here in the city of Greater Dandenong. So that was fantastic. I won't list all of the recipients, but the one that I did definitely want to mention was the CEO of AFRI Auscare, Selba Luca Gondoza, who not only runs and is the CEO of AFRI Auscare, which is doing incredible work in our community, but she was also, and they were awarded the Community Group of the Year. She also received the highest possible honour on Australia Day as Order of Australia Medal, which I thought was absolutely incredible and well-deserved. So a huge congratulations to Selba and the entire AFRI Auscare group that do incredible work here in the city of Greater Dandenong and beyond with the African community. I'd also like to... so I have a few questions that I would like to ask if I could, please. The first one to the appropriate officer regarding Barry Powell Reserve Master Plan. We had public consultation that towards the end of last year that's now closed. Just wondering if we have an update on what the data found and where we're at with that playground, please, Mayor.
Ms Gillies or Mr Jackson? You can both share if you want.
Through you, Mr Mayor, thank you for the question. Councillor Formosa, I'll go first, and if Ms Gillies has got something to add, we'll go there. Yes, you're correct. We did undertake community consultation at the end of last year, and we've undertaken community consultation for a number of reserves of recent time. We're currently in the process of collating all of that data and then identifying what the next steps will be. Once we've done that, we'll advise councillors accordingly, as well as the community and everyone else that made a submission with regards to that consultation. So that's pretty much the status at the moment.
Thank you, Mr Jackson. Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Ms Gillies. Councillor Formosa.
Thank you. Another question I have for the appropriate officer is regarding the traffic calming device on Coolivin Road. Yes, I'm asking the question once again. I didn't really get any clarity in terms of when I'd find out what was happening with that and where that's at. So asking the question again and where we're at with that, because now we're into the 5th year that I'm asking for that particular calming device.
Through you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the question. I will need to take that question on notice, Councillor Formosa, and we'll endeavour to get back to you ASAP on that.
Thanks.
Through you, Mayor, I can probably add to this. I have actually provided an update to Councillor Formosa. I was informed by the team that it would be installed early this year, in the first quarter of this year. So,
Thank you, Ms Weatherall.
Thank you. Do we have a date on that, Ms.
I
Weatherall?
will get the date for you.
Okay, yep, because I still have the residents calling me saying when that's going to take place. The next question I have is in relation to Hayington Road, the old Scout Hall. We're constantly having a huge amount of rubbish that's now being dumped there as a result of this facility. And I know that the Bakdar community was using it for all the reasons that they needed to. However, they have moved out of the facilities and we were scheduled to be demolishing the building, and that really should have happened last year. Just wanting to know what the update is in terms of the demolishing of the Scout Hall, but also what we're going to be doing about the constant dump rubbish that's spilling all over the footpath, the road. I've taken some photos and sent it through to the officers. It's quite shocking, and it's happening on a regular basis. So just wanting an update on that, if I could.
Ms Gillies.
Through you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Formoso, for your question. Yes, unfortunately, we continue to work closely with the Bakdar community in terms of the alternate premises for them. We were really pleased that we're actually able to secure through Development Victoria an alternative location, and I know they were undertaking to raise some funds to be able to set up different premises. Unfortunately, that process did take a little while, and although we were successful, which we're really thrilled about with Development Victoria, the second side of it didn't come through. So certainly the intent was last year, and we had let Bakdar know that we did need to demolish that building and return it to public open space. In the meantime, that has fallen through. Alternative solution is being sought. My understanding of the latest situation is that we're looking at going back to them sort of to discuss more formal dates where that can be completely cleared out. The Bakdar community provide an amazing service to our community, and we know there's significant demand for it, but the last update we had from them was that they actually do have alternative, and that they're looking to be fully in that. We will then immediately move to look at demolishing and clearing that land and returning it to public open space, which was what the intention always was.
And through you, Mayor, Mr Jari and I have been having ongoing conversations about this issue with staff, and there's been considerable council cost in removal of waste in that area, and we'll be briefing council next Monday about it and then look at whether or not there's a public report in regards to that.
Thank you, Ms Weatherall.
Yeah, thank you for that. Do we know what we're going to do in terms of battling the constant dumped rubbish? So are we just doing more frequent searches in terms of checking that space and seeing if that illegal...
Yeah, through you, Mayor, we are acutely aware of the ongoing issue of waste on that site. I think the best thing in this instance is to brief the councillors about that matter, and then we'll look at whether or not we put a public report in regards to that.
Okay.
Councillor Formosa.
Sure. Thanks for that. Last thing that I wanted to mention is school's back tomorrow for most kids. So I hope they have a great year ahead, and I'm sure that all of the parents and carers are grateful that the kids are going back. So I wish all the kids a really good year ahead for 2025. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Councillor Formosa. Councillor Dan.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Just one question I have tonight. Myself and a number of constituents have noticed quite an increase in hard rubbish dumping across my ward over this summer, as you're acutely aware of my many emails to you, Mr Jackson. My constituents are certainly very appreciative of council's swift action in immediately attending to the mess when it is reported. However, there's also an acknowledgement that this isn't always the most efficient use of council's resources to individually attend every single reported site, especially when the majority of our community does do the right thing. I'd just be curious to know what sorts of communication council currently has with the community to inform residents of their obligations when it comes to hard rubbish disposal, and what potential risks of the penalties are for non-compliance as well.
Mr Jackson.
Through you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the question. Yes, Council has observed quite a rise in dump rubbish of recent months, and we're aware that this is becoming a little bit of a trend, not just within Greater Dandenong, but across the southeast region and potentially a wider area. So Council does do a lot of work with its residents. We have a number of waste education officers who are actively out in the community who speak to residents and work with community groups and others to try and encourage people about the importance of correctly disposing of waste and the consequences of doing that illegally. We're also looking, as 2025 progresses, at further options around potentially developing a new waste management strategy, which will look at dump rubbish and what mechanisms we could potentially implement in the future to try and minimise this issue, which is becoming we acknowledge is becoming a bigger and bigger issue.
Are there any theories at the moment as to why there is such a high increase in these incidents happening over the last couple of months?
Mr Jackson.
Through you, Mr Mayor, we do tend to find after the sort of Christmas New Year period that there is an increase each year because people often have some time off and they will have a bit of a clean out, and that tends to, through the January-February period, we tend to find a bit of an increase. So hopefully it will quieten down shortly, but hopefully it doesn't become a further trend. But that is something that we see year on, year out, and yeah, hopefully it will quieten down.
Yeah, because I can specifically point to Potter Street today, just driving here tonight as well. So just something to flag for you to action later on as well. But just to conclude my report, I'd also just like to congratulate all the winners of the Greater Dandenong Australia Day Awards as well. I think we're incredibly lucky to live in a city where there are so many incredible citizens that work so tirelessly every day to make our community a better place to live. I also wanted to specifically congratulate Selba as well. I know Councillor Formoso, you took the words right out of my mouth. I think if you've had the privilege of meeting her, getting to know her, and her large personality as well, you'd be in awe of the work that she does to support so many vulnerable people in our community. And it feels like an absolute privilege to know someone who's been so successful and to also receive one of the highest honours that you can on Australia Day. So congratulations to her, NAFRI Auscare, and to everyone else who received awards on that day. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Dan. Councillor Doe.
So since our last public meeting, I have attended a variety of events, with some major ones being the New Year's Eve celebration at Dandenong Park. I really want to commend the team who put this amazing event together. It's never an easy feat, but it evidently paid off with, I believe, over 20,000 attendees. Another major event was the Lunar New Year celebrations this past weekend, organised by Saba and strongly supported by Council. As always, it was a fantastic event that was heavily attended by the local community. Due to the timings, the Lunar New Year event was also held on Australia Day, where we also had our Australia Day Awards and citizenship ceremony. Many might not actually know this, but it wasn't actually until 1994 that Australia Day became a public holiday, making it a relatively recent addition to our calendar. I very much appreciate residents who want to celebrate this day, and I can understand why. This past Australia Day, my aunt was actually one of the 100 to receive her citizenship after decades in this country, after arriving as a refugee. So it was a huge moment of pride and joy for our family, and I completely understand and know why this day resonates for so many of us. But I also want to say that it's not woke to also acknowledge and reflect on our complex history and the impact colonisation had on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. So for many, Australia Day is a celebration of national pride, achievements, culture and unity. However, it also marks the beginning of colonisation and its devastating impacts on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. So their sacrifices have shaped the Australia we know today, and by acknowledging past injustices, we can work towards a more inclusive and respectful future for all Australians. I also have two questions today. I would like to know if we can have an update on the toxic mound of dirt that is on Dandenong Junction Road. I understand that there have been numerous EPA and council infringements. We know that the site has been abandoned and that the operators have apparently gone out of business. I would like to know what the next steps are for cleaning up of the site, particularly in relation to the toxic flood associated with the transfer waste station.
Mr Jackson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the question, Councillor Doe. Yes, as you stated, there's been ongoing planning compliance action at this site as well as EPA action at the site. I'll be honest, wasn't aware that the business owners may have gone out of business at this point, so that adds a level of complexity. But in effect, there are different paths we can pursue still to make sure that that site is cleaned up. That may be through some court orders or something similar, but I will get some further information and provide you with some more exact details shortly.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Councillor Doe.
Thank you. And just another one, the last question. With the two recent major collisions that have occurred on Chapel Road, one a few weeks ago where a vehicle collided into our local CFA, flooding the station, and another last month in December on the intersection of Chapel and Church Road, where one of the two cars that collided flipped on the roundabout. Can I ask what is being done from Council regarding the safety on our roads, in particular Chapel Road? Thank you.
Mr. Jackson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and again, thank you for the question. Yes, Council is well aware of a number of accidents that have occurred in this area and is currently working with the state government to seek some funding to support road safety infrastructure upgrades. And if we are successful in obtaining that funding, then it is intended that would be spent on Chapel Road, making a number of improvements, hopefully towards the end of this year, if not early 2026.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Thank you, Councillor Doe. I would just like to comment on a few of the places I attended since our last ordinary council meeting. It's too many to go through all of them, but I would like to acknowledge the Interfaith Network Executive Committee and staff and volunteers for inviting me to a community lunch. I also attended the grand opening of the night trading Coming to Springvale multicultural place. So Friday nights, Saturday nights, Springvale Central will be buzzing. So I encourage residents to go out and visit Springvale at night. I also attended the opening night of the 9th Ghan Afghan International Film Festival at Dandenong Plaza at the cinemas there, Reading Cinemas. I also attended SEMVAC AGM and fundraising night. Also the Springvale Neighbourhood House graduation celebration, Cornerstone community luncheon. I also attended the Noble Park Community Centre end of year celebrations. I also attended the opening ceremony of the volleyball tournament hosted by the Volleyball Association of Azores in Victoria. And mind you, the Dandenong Basketball Stadium was chocked and Councillor Garrard was there also. There possibly was 4,000 or 5,000 people in attendance, which was fantastic. The event went for about 3 or 4 days, so that was great to be associated with that. And a few days later, I attended the Massa Unity Cup, the 2024 Grand Final. Again, Councillor Formoso was with me there as well, and there was probably even 5,000 or 6,000 people at Tatterson Park to watch the two teams battle out for the championship. I also attended with Councillor Yim the 29th Annual Buddhist Sangha Congress of the Australian and New Zealand Council. I also attended the Lunar New Year and Thanksgiving lunch hosted by the Teachu Chinese Association of Victoria. Also attended the Father's Day event hosted by the Husseini Society of Victoria. I also attended the Chinese Writers Group donating books to the Springvale Library. So they're now available at Springvale Library. There was at least a dozen books that were donated. I also attended the reception to celebrate the 2025 New Year and China-Australia by the Consul General of China. Also attended the Australia Day and Chinese New Year celebrations hosted by the Cambodian Chinese Friendship Association. And on Sunday, we attended the Springvale Lunar New Year Festival hosted by SABA, Springvale Asian Business Association, where it ran from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. at night. And I was there at 10 a.m. in the morning and I went back for the fireworks at 10 p.m. and you couldn't see the end of the Buckingham Avenue. I reckon there would have been at least another 30,000, 40,000 people waiting for the fireworks. So it was a fantastic day, and Saba just keeps on building bigger and better Lunar New Year festivals, and congratulations to Daniel Chang and his team. The 2025 Australia Day Awards and Citizenship Ceremony, always a pleasure to welcome many citizens of Australia, and 100 of them were welcomed to the Australian family at Springvale Town Hall. And also, what a fantastic Australia Day Awards. We had some fantastic, where we've had mentioned some names like Selba, but there was many other names, and people who go about their work. Some do it in a really quiet way. Some people are out in the media, but these people are, you know, we have an opportunity to acknowledge them for their work they do, and it's great to live with these people as our neighbours and inspire our community members. So congratulations to all them as well. So that's just some of the stuff. I could go on and on. Unfortunately, I haven't got the time. I'll table the rest of the functions that I attended. Ms Weatherall, you've got some questions taken on notice at the last council meeting. Thank you very much.
Yes, I do, Mr Mayor, which I'll provide to you now.
Yep, thank you very much. Appreciate that. We'll move on to item 7, urgent business. Do we have urgent business?
Yes,
I've
Mr
been
Mayor.
Passed there, yep. So we have that an item of urgent business be heard in relation to a request from Councillor Lana Formosa to attend the Serbian Statehood Day on Tuesday the 11th of February 2025. Do I have a mover to hear this urgent business? Yes, the hearing. Moved by Councillor Formosa. Second by Councillor Dan. Are there any questions? This is only to hear the motion. Councillor Garrard.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is, why is this an urgent item? When was Councillor Formosa made aware of her invitation?
Councillor Formosa.
Yep, thanks, Mayor, and thanks for the question, Councillor Garrett. I actually got the invitation just over the long weekend from the Ambassador to attend on behalf of City of Greater Dandenong Council as a councillor representative, as I did last year. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Formosa. Are there any other questions? Is there any opposition to hearing the motion? If no, the motion is carried. So we'll move to the actual motion that Council approves Councillor Lana Formosa to attend the Statehood Day of Serbia on Tuesday the 11th of February 2025 and cover all related travel and accommodation costs, approximately $1,500. Do we have a mover, councillors?
I'd like to move it, thank
you. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second, Councillor.
Councillor Dan. Are there any questions? Councillor Dan.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Look, firstly, thank you, Councillor Formosa, for bringing this proposal publicly. I think transparency, particularly where public funds are involved in decision-making, is absolutely vital. And before we get into it as well, I just wanted to preemptively join yourself in celebrating the contributions of the Serbian community in our city, and also recognise the significance of events such as this one. Look, I support the use of council resources to enable councillors in fulfilling their duties in representing their communities effectively, particularly when it comes to travel. However, it is also my duty, as it is everyone's, to scrutinise and also carefully consider all proposals brought before this chamber as well. And my decision in seconding this motion was to also simulate some discussion.
Councillor Dan,
as well.
We're not in debate. Is
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, just leading towards my question now as well. Look, I have a few questions I wanted to ask about this. Would you be okay if I went through them one by one first, or did you want me to go through all of it at the same time? Yeah. So my first question is that the motion indicates approximate costs are $1,500, including travel and accommodation. Can you please inform us what other costs may be involved and what steps you'll be taking to reduce costs where possible, please?
Councillor Formosa.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks for the question, Councillor Dan. So the reason it's come up this evening is, as you'll see, the date is Tuesday, the 11th of February. So I wanted to bring it in as urgent business this evening so that I have time to prepare in terms of flights and accommodation to ensure that it's the lowest funds I can possibly spend. if I were to bring it to next council meeting, it will obviously increase the cost. So I'll obviously try and keep it as low as possible. This is the worst case scenario. It was a lot less than that last year, but I can't predict what the costs will be, but it's obviously just for my airfare and accommodation to stay for the one day, and keeping in mind that I'll also be needing to take time off work from my job as a teacher to be able to attend. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Formosa. Councillor Dan?
Can you please describe the precise nature of the event that you'll be attending, and if there will be an itinerary available which outlines the objectives and outcomes expected from the visit as well?
Councillor Formosa.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Councillor Dan. So, as you know, role of councillor is obviously to represent the interests and values of our community, which I will be doing as not only a councillor in this municipality, the most diverse municipality in all of Australia, but obviously having Serbian heritage myself, this is obviously something that's of great importance and significance to me personally and for the Serbian diaspora. Obviously, I wouldn't have been invited if I wasn't a councillor, so the significance is obviously to ensure that we continue to have good relationships with the Serbian community here in Australia, and also the Serbian Embassy in Canberra has invited me through the ambassador to attend this event, which is a formal reception for the Serbian National Day, which is officially on the 15th of February, but this event in Canberra will be on the 11th of February. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Formosa. Councillor Dan?
Just one more. I had one question as to the urgency, but Councillor Garrod's already asked that one, so I thank you, Councillor Formosa, for answering that one. And just my last one, are there any other events or meetings that you'll be attending while in Canberra as well to maximise the benefit of this trip too?
Councillor Formosa.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. Not at this stage, although last year when I did attend Canberra for this event, I was also invited to attend the Friends of Hazara Friendship Group event that was held in Canberra at the same time, so I did go for the two events. But just to also highlight the fact that I was the one that brought this process to council last year whilst I was mayor, to ensure that there was full transparency within this council, particularly with travel. So it's not just this travel item that will be coming to chambers, it's all future travel that any councillors will be doing interstate, and also to counter-react and counterbalance the cost of this particular trip. I won't be going to the ALGA conference this year in Canberra as well, which most councillors here attend every year, just to keep my costs down for this financial year. Thank you.
Yeah,
that was all the questions I had. Thank you.
Is there any further questions, councillors? Councillor Garrod.
Thank you, Mayor. Congratulations to Councillor Formosa for the invitation, and I can certainly understand why she would want to attend, given that it is her cultural heritage, just as if the Irish Republic invited me to an event, I would be interested to attend. What I'm less convinced about is in these difficult financial times, and we've just brought down a mid-year budget which only just got across the line in terms of not being in deficit. My question is, what are the tangible benefits of this visit back to the city of Greater Dandenong?
Councillor Formosa.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Garrett. So I'm not sure if you're aware, but the City of Greater Dandenong has actually got the highest amount of Serbian people living in this municipality, and as I would support you having to attend anything of Irish invitations from the Irish consulate or embassy, if you were to be invited, I would also support that to represent the Irish community here in the City of Greater Dandenong. I think now is a time more than ever that we really need to focus on really bilateral relations with all of our community groups, particularly some of the things that have been happening in the media with certain tennis players at this time of year as well. So I think anything that's going to promote connections and good relationships within Australia is really important, and obviously a role that I take very seriously, and obviously want to represent the interests and values of our community. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Formosa. Councillor Garrod, nothing. Any further questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? Councillor Garrod in opposition. Councillor Formosa.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Look, it's pretty disappointing that Councillor Garrett won't be supporting something that's obviously really important to our community. We're constantly talking about the significance and the importance of the fact that we are the most multicultural community in all of Australia, and yet something as important as this, and attending something that I've been invited to personally as a councillor by the Ambassador is pretty disappointing. So I'd like to hear Councillor Garrett's reasoning for that.
Thank you, Councillor Formoso. Councillor Dan?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor. Yeah, I have thought about this since this was raised earlier today as well. As mentioned already, I do think that councillors should be supported where possible to engage in their duties, especially where travel is required and necessary. Serbian Statehood Day, from how you've spoken, is clearly a very significant event for your community. And I'm satisfied with your answers, that your reasons and your intentions are genuine and in the public interest as well. I have a pretty sizable Serbian community in my ward. There's a couple Serbian sporting and community groups in my ward as well, and I'm sure that to those people it'd be great pride in seeing one of their own represent them in the nation's capital as well. But in supporting this urgent motion as well, I'd also encourage you to work to reduce costs as much as possible, where possible during this trip, to save the precious resources from ratepayers' funds. And it'd be also good to get a report at the next council meeting as well, just to maximise transparency and be informed of what you also learn, so that we can all benefit from that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dan. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Mayor. Whilst I absolutely support Councillor Formoso attending this event, and again, I understand why she would want to, I don't see the benefit back to Council. Councillor Formoso does not have a formal role in representing Serbian interests in this council per se. Her role here is as a ward councillor of the general population, and she has no specific role in representing, as none of us do, in representing the interests of one particular group. If this precedent were to go forward, given that our budgets are extremely tight and we are in a very, very difficult situation, and our residents, we know, are very much struggling in these difficult financial times, that if this precedent were to go through, then we could have, Councillor Doe tripping off for a Vietnamese event in Sydney. We could have a Cambodian event in Brisbane. We could have an Irish event. We could have a fun time. We could all have a fun time. We could have an Albanian event, perhaps in Adelaide. These things are pleasurable and personally important, but I have not heard any direct benefit back to the City of Greater Dandenong. I have not heard that we have direct business ties. I have not heard that there will be any direct benefit back to the City of Greater Dandenong, and we are charged with responsibility, with the financial responsibility that every dollar that is spent is in the interests of the residents of this city. And I have not been convinced by Councillor Formoso that as pleasant as this event would be for her to attend, that there is any direct material benefit back to the City of Greater Dandenong. So again, I applaud her for being invited, certainly understand her interests. I think she should finance this trip herself, and I'm sure she will enjoy that event. But with the responsibility we all have to ensure that every dollar spent is in the interests of the City of Greater Dandenong, I simply cannot support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Are there any further speakers? Right of reply, Councillor Formoso.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Look, I'm pretty disappointed with Councillor Garrett's take on this. There is no precedence. The precedence is when we're invited to represent our community as the role of councillors, which we've always done you know, as long as council has existed, I will remind Councillor Garrard that I was the one that brought this to council to ensure that all travel was brought to chambers for full transparency, and it doesn't take away from and undermining, you know, my community. Hearing Greater Dandenong and all of Australia is pretty disappointing. It's a really prestigious event that I'm going on behalf of the Mayor and the Council, being of Serbian heritage, to ensure our relationship and the benefit to this community is obviously something that Councillor Garrard doesn't understand and appreciate. But like I said, any events that are in Australia for any other councillor to attend, I would fully support in this capacity as well. And once again, I will be taking time off my work to be able to represent the council in Canberra as well. So pretty disappointing, but happy to hear what others have to say. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Formoso. Now, all councillors in favour of this motion, please raise your hand. Councillor Yim, Councillor Formoso, Councillor Meti, Councillor Dan. All those against, Councillor Garrard, Councillor Doe. The motion is carried 6-4. Sorry, 4-2. Thanks, mate. We'll move on to item 8, close of business, 8:21 p.m. Thank you for coming and have a great evening.